I grew up near a quiet desert town, working maintenance nights, and everyone joked about the abandoned mine I passed daily while driving home late. It was just part of the landscape to me, fenced off and forgotten, something I never thought about until a routine job changed everything suddenly. That winter my supervisor asked me to inspect vandalism reports near the mine entrance, since lights kept going out along the access road at night. I went alone after midnight, assuming bored teenagers were responsible, and parked beside the warning sign I had ignored for years without much thought beforehand. The gate was bent open, and fresh tire marks led inside, which bothered me because the road was supposed to be impassable for years now. I grabbed my flashlight and radio, telling dispatch I would be quick, and stepped past the fence into the cold air of the mine entrance. Inside, the tunnel smelled like oil and damp rock, and my footsteps echoed louder than expected, making distance hard to judge for me alone there. About 50 yards in, my radio crackled with static, then went dead, which I blamed on the thick stone overhead and poor signal coverage underground. I noticed footprints in the dust that were not mine, heading deeper, overlapping like someone paced back and forth waiting quietly in the darkness ahead. I called out, expecting a response, but only my voice returned, stretched thin and wrong by the tunnel walls that surrounded me completely then there. As I moved forward, I heard metal scrape softly ahead, like tools shifting, followed by a cough someone tried to hide behind the rocks nearby. My stomach tightened because no one was scheduled, and the mine was officially closed after accidents years earlier according to county records I had read. I considered turning back, but another light flickered deeper inside, steady and deliberate, not like a failing flashlight or reflection from my own beam nearby. Someone was working down there, and they clearly did not want to be found, which made my skin crawl as I slowed my breathing carefully. I radioed again, hoping for dispatch, but the silence answered, pressing in as the tunnel narrowed ahead with every step I took deeper alone inside. The light vanished suddenly, and I heard hurried footsteps retreating, kicking loose stones that clattered down side shafts somewhere out of sight nearby quickly then. I followed without thinking, driven by fear and training, until the ground sloped sharply and the air grew warmer and smelled like fuel fumes ahead. That was when I realized someone had been living down there, and I was standing in the middle of it without permission or warning signs. Behind me, rocks shifted, cutting off the faint glow from the entrance, and the darkness became complete except for my breathing echoing too loud nearby. I turned slowly, knowing I was no longer alone, and heard a calm voice say my name from somewhere close enough to reach me easily. The voice said my name the way coworkers did, casual and confident, like we'd spoken earlier that night. I asked who it was, trying to keep my voice steady, and the reply came back asking why I was trespassing on private property. I told him this was county land and that I was with maintenance, which felt stupid the second I said it. He laughed softly and said the county forgot about this place years ago, and that forgetting was what kept him safe down here. I angled my flashlight toward the sound, but it never landed on him, like he knew exactly where to stand. Instead, the beam caught stacked fuel cans, a mattress, and crates of supplies that shouldn't have been there at all. He told me to turn around and walk back the way I came, slow and quiet. When I asked why he didn't just leave, he said leaving was how people noticed you, and he preferred being invisible. I started backing up, keeping the light low, but my foot hit loose gravel and slid. The sound echoed hard, and immediately I heard him move, boots scraping rock much closer than before. He told me not to run, that it would make things worse. I froze, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it, and I realized he was blocking the path to the entrance. I tried another tunnel I hadn't noticed before, narrower and lower, barely tall enough to stand. He cursed behind me, and I heard him follow, faster now, no longer calm or patient. The tunnel dipped and twisted, and my shoulder slammed into rock as I stumbled forward blindly. My flashlight flickered, and for a second I saw him clearly, not a monster, just a dirty, tired man with a hard look in his eyes. He reached out and grabbed my jacket, tearing it as I slipped free and kept moving. I dropped the flashlight without thinking, choosing darkness over letting him slow me down. I crawled on my hands and knees, lungs burning, following faint airflow I hoped meant an exit. Behind me, his breathing grew heavier, and he told me I couldn't get out without his help. The tunnel opened suddenly, and I fell into a wider shaft, rolling hard across stone. I scrambled up and saw faint moonlight ahead, not the main entrance, but a collapsed vent barely open. I squeezed through, ripping my arms and chest on jagged metal, and tumbled outside into cold air. I didn't stop running until I reached my truck, and as I drove off, I saw a light appear in the mine, watching me leave. I reported everything to my supervisor the next morning, leaving out how close it got and how scared I was. He went quiet when I mentioned someone living inside the mine and told me the site was no longer our responsibility. County deputies searched the entrance that afternoon and found nothing but old equipment and dust. They said whoever I saw must have packed up and left, and suggested stress or low light had filled in the rest. I tried to believe that explanation, but my torn jacket and cuts on my arms said otherwise. For weeks after, I avoided that road entirely, taking a longer route home just to keep the mine out of sight. Then small things started happening at work that brought it back. Tools went missing from my truck and turned up later covered in fine gray dust that smelled like fuel and damp rock. One night my radio crackled with static, followed by a single cough that sounded exactly like the one I heard underground. Dispatch claimed no one was transmitting, and the log showed my radio hadn't received anything at all. I started sleeping poorly, replaying the chase over and over in my head. Every dream ended the same way, with me trapped in the dark while someone stood just out of the light, breathing calmly. A month later, another maintenance worker was assigned to the same area. He came back shaken, saying he saw lights near the mine and heard someone moving inside. Before I could warn him, management shut the conversation down. They said the land had been sold quietly and that we were not to go near it again. That night, I found a note folded under my windshield wiper. It was written on dirty paper and said only that I should mind my own routes home. I didn't tell anyone about the note. I just threw it away and convinced myself it was a coincidence, even though I knew better. Weeks passed, then months, and nothing else happened. The mine faded into the background again, becoming just another place people avoided without asking why. Last winter, while driving home late, my headlights caught a familiar bent fence along the road. Beyond it, deep in the hills, a single light flicked on, then off again. I didn't slow down or look twice. I kept driving, knowing that some places don't need to be haunted to be dangerous. Even now, I still check my mirrors when the road gets quiet, because I know someone down there remembers my name. If you enjoyed this story, consider liking and subscribing for more. I had just turned 18 and was obsessed with exploring old places, so when I heard about the abandoned mine outside our town, I knew I had to check it out. It was late afternoon when I grabbed a flashlight and my backpack, telling my parents I was hiking on the nearby trails, nothing more than a normal weekend activity. The entrance was hidden behind overgrown bushes, partially caved in, but I managed to squeeze through the narrow opening and step inside. Immediately, the air was colder than outside, heavy with dust and the faint smell of damp earth, and I could hear water dripping somewhere deep in the tunnel. I moved slowly, shining my flashlight along the walls, trying not to trip over rocks or debris. The tunnel forked several times, and each path looked the same in the dim light, but my curiosity pushed me forward deeper than I had planned. As I went further in, I noticed footprints in the dust that weren't mine, smaller and more irregular, leading deeper into the darkness. I called out, expecting maybe another explorer or a hiker, but no answer came, only the sound of my own voice bouncing back at me strangely distorted. Then I heard a faint scraping noise behind one of the walls, like metal dragging across stone, slow and deliberate. I froze, telling myself it was probably just rocks shifting or a branch from outside somehow falling in, but the sound repeated, closer now. My stomach tightened, and my flashlight flickered, making the shadows twist unnaturally along the rough walls. I realized I had been alone until that moment, but now it felt like I was being watched. Every step echoed back in a way that made my nerves scream quietly. I debated turning back, but something about the mine compelled me to see what was ahead. Another sound echoed, soft and deliberate, footsteps, light but quick, moving somewhere to my left, stopping whenever I stopped. I whispered to myself that it was probably an animal, but I knew the steps were too heavy, too precise, to belong to anything natural. The further I went, the tighter the tunnels became, my flashlight struggling to illuminate even a few feet, shadows pressing in around me. And then I heard it clearly, someone breathing softly just beyond the corner I couldn't see, patient, calm, as if they had been waiting. I felt a hand brush past my backpack, light but deliberate, and I realized I was no longer alone in the mine. I froze in place, my heart hammering, trying to convince myself it was a trick of the shadows. But the soft breathing continued, steady and deliberate, moving closer with each exhale, almost like someone was pacing just out of view. I tried backing away slowly, keeping my flashlight trained on the wall ahead, but the tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly. Every step I took echoed loudly, announcing my presence, and I realized the person, or whatever it was, knew exactly where I was. A voice whispered my name, low and calm, almost familiar, and I spun around to see nothing but darkness. I called out, my voice shaking, asking who was there, but only the echo returned, stretching my words unnaturally along the rock walls. Then I saw it, a faint glow ahead, not from my flashlight, but something moving slowly, methodically. I told myself to stay calm, that I could outpace whoever it was, and started crawling toward the light, keeping my back to the wall for safety. Footsteps followed immediately, lighter now, moving to flank me, and I realized I was being herded deeper into the mine. The walls narrowed, forcing me to squeeze through tight spaces, and the sound of breathing and movement pressed in from every direction. I rounded a bend and stumbled into a small cavern, the light brighter now from a pile of old lanterns and makeshift living supplies. A man stepped out from the shadows, mid-30s, dirty, with a hard stare that didn't flicker, and he asked why I had come alone. I stammered something about curiosity, about exploring, but he shook his head slowly. He said the mine was private now, and anyone who came in uninvited risked something far worse than just being yelled at. I tried to back away, but he took a step closer, calm and deliberate, telling me I should have turned back when I had the chance. His eyes scanned me like he was memorizing every detail, and I understood in that moment that he had been watching this place for years. My flashlight flickered and went out, leaving me in near-complete darkness except for his faintly glowing lantern. I felt my stomach drop as he stepped toward me silently, and every instinct screamed at me to run, but the narrow tunnels offered no escape route. I made a sudden dash toward a side shaft, hoping to find a way out, and he followed immediately, his heavy boots scraping the rock behind me. The tunnel twisted sharply, and I had to crawl, my hands and knees scraping against jagged stones, every second feeling like it might be my last. Finally, I saw a faint strip of moonlight ahead, shining through a small ventilation opening. I scrambled toward it desperately, barely squeezing through and tumbling outside into the cold night, lungs burning, heart racing uncontrollably. I ran without looking back, stumbling over brush and rocks, until I reached the main road, my backpack snagged and torn from the narrow shafts. I jumped into my car and sped away, glancing in the rearview mirror once to see a figure standing in the mine's mouth, watching me leave. I drove for what felt like hours, my hands white on the steering wheel, trying to convince myself I had imagined everything. The headlights of my truck cut through the dark desert road, but in every shadow along the roadside, I felt him watching, patient and silent. The next day, I reported the incident to the local authorities, leaving out the parts that sounded impossible. They checked the mine but found nothing, no footprints, no supplies, no sign anyone had been living there at all. I tried to go back to my normal life, but something had changed inside me. Every sound at night, every shadow in a hallway, reminded me of the mine and the man who had waited silently in the dark. Weeks later, I returned to the road near the mine during daylight, curious despite myself. The entrance looked abandoned, overgrown, and empty, just like everyone had said it would be, but the memory of that soft breathing and those calm footsteps remained vivid in my mind. I started noticing small things that didn't make sense. My backpack was missing a strap I was sure I had secured, and a small flashlight I carried inside had a scratch I hadn't noticed before. Late one night, I heard it, faint, deliberate scraping outside my window. It was quiet, but I knew instantly that it wasn't the wind or a branch. It was the same rhythm I had heard deep inside the mine. I checked the area the next day, finding nothing, but I began sleeping with one eye open, every creak and shadow putting me on edge. Even driving past the mine now, I feel my chest tighten, and I refuse to stop or look directly at the entrance. Months later, a friend who works maintenance mentioned a new trespasser report near the mine. When I asked him what had happened, he shrugged, saying the report was vague and that whoever it was claimed to hear footsteps following them deep underground. I never went back to the mine, and I don't plan to. But sometimes, when I drive that road at night, I catch a glimpse of movement in the shadows, just at the corner of my headlights, and I know he is still there. I still hear footsteps sometimes when I'm alone at home, soft and deliberate, echoing the ones I heard underground. And I know that no matter how far I go, some places leave a mark you can't erase, and some people never stop watching. If you enjoyed this story, consider liking and subscribing for more.